joy. We numb gratitude. We numb happiness. And then we are miserable and we are looking for purpose and meaning. And then we feel vulnerable, so then we have a couple of beers and a banana nut muffin. And it becomes this dangerous cycle. One of the things that I think that we need to think about is why and how we numb. And it doesn't just have to be addiction. The other thing we do is we make everything that's uncertain certain. Religion has gone from a belief in faith and mystery to certainty. I'm right, you're wrong, shut up. That's it. Just certain. The more afraid we are, the more vulnerable we are, the more afraid we are. This is what politics looks like today. There's no discourse anymore. There's no conversation. There's just blame. You know how blame is described in the research? A way to discharge pain and discomfort. We perfect. If there's anyone who wants their life to look like this, it would be me. But it doesn't work, because what we do is we take fat from our butts and put it in our cheeks. Which just, I hope in 100 years people will look back and go, wow. You know? And we perfect, most dangerously, our children. Let me tell you what we think about children. They're hardwired for struggle when they get here. When you hold those perfect little babies in your hand, our job is not to say, look at her, she's perfect. My job is just to keep her perfect, make sure she makes the tennis team by 5th grade and Yale by 7th grade. That's not our job. Our job is to look and say, you know what? You're imperfect and you're wired for struggle, but you are worthy of love and belonging. That's our job. Show me a generation of kids raised like that, and we'll end the problems I think that we see today. We pretend that what we do doesn't have an effect on people. We do that in our personal lives. We do that corporate, whether it's a bailout, an oil spill, a recall. We pretend like what we're doing doesn't have a huge impact on other people. I would say to companies, this is not our first rodeo, people. We just need you to be authentic and real and say, we're sorry, we'll fix it. But there's another way, and I'll leave you with this. This is what I have found. To let ourselves be seen, deeply seen, vulnerably seen. To love with our whole hearts, even though there's no guarantee. And that's really hard, and I can tell you as a parent, that's excruciatingly difficult. To practice gratitude and joy in those moments of kind of terror when we're wondering, can I love you this much? Can I believe in this as passionately? Can I be this fierce about this? Just to be able to stop and instead of catastrophizing what might happen, to say, I'm just so grateful. Because to feel this vulnerable means I'm alive. And the last, which I think is probably the most important, is to believe that we're enough. Because when we work from a place, I believe, that says, I'm enough, then we stop screaming and start listening. We're kinder and gentler to the people around us, and we're kinder and gentler to ourselves. That's all I have.
Okay, so there was a lot in there, but there are a few things I want to make sure that we understand that you pull out of this. So, shame. How many of you have experienced shame at some point in your life? Right? How many times is it because you've done something wrong? How many times is it because you're afraid of what other people are going to think and not necessarily what you've done? I've been there. Shame is, she said, shame is the fear of disconnection. We all want to connect. Even if you're an introvert like I am, where you're completely happy And the fact that we have to quarantine doesn't really bother me for the most part. I've gotten to the point where I'm past that. I need to connect. I look forward to coming to confirmation each week because I have an opportunity to talk to you all, to see people and share and talk, because we are hardwired for connection. In that story of Genesis, God didn't just make Adam and just leave him there and say, oh, you've got this whole perfect world, you should just take care of it, you'll be happy. He realizes he needed other people. He needed someone else. And so anything that keeps us from connecting is bad. We experience shame, which does that. We all do this. If anybody says they don't, they're lying to you. We all experience shame. Vulnerability. This is the opposite, the other end of shame. Vulnerability is what allows us to move past that, to be able to say, you know what, it's okay for me to open up, to share what's actually on my mind, to share with you what's bothering, to be open, to be the first person to walk up and say, I love you, I care for you as a person, you're important to me, instead of just being like, I got to be cool and I'm not going to show anybody any of the emotions in my life because if I do, I might get hurt. And that happens so much in the world. We're afraid to open up about how we feel because what if they don't like me because of what I have to say? What if they think I'm weak? What if they think I'm a terrible person? What if they don't want to be my friend anymore because of what I say? Those are hard. Those are the things that we struggle with. But when we do that, we're not ourselves. You're not the person that God intended you to be. You're not the person that God created you to be. We talked about that last week. God created each one of you in this room specifically different than the other person. And He did that so that we could, be the people we want, so we could be in the relationships around us. Vulnerability is what allows us to do that. But unfortunately, we're in a world that too often says, you know what? Don't be vulnerable, because it's weak. It's not. I can tell you that. It's not weak. Because the other option is to live in a world of shame, a world of fear, where you're not connected with people, and that's worse. So belonging, she talked about belonging. What is belonging? People must believe that they are worthy of love and belonging. How many of you know somebody that you've seen at school or know in your life who doesn't feel like they belong? I know lots of people in my life who I've looked like. I have been that person in my life where I felt I did not belong. I mean, it's horrible. It's gut-wrenching. It's the worst experience. Some of you have gone to the same schools with the same kids your entire life, right? I moved around a bunch when I was a kid. Probably about every 3 or 4 years, we'd go to a different school. I had to meet new people, had to meet new friends. That was terrifying to me. It was horrible. Now, luckily, I was the really shy kid, and almost always I would find a friend who was the loud, boisterous, outgoing person, and they would, for some reason, reach out and take me in to their friend circle, and then I would be fine. But I always wanted to belong. I wanted to be part of the group, right? We want to be part of a group. We want to be with our people so that we feel comfortable. but I read some of the other books that Brene Brown's written, and she talks about this. One of the things you have to be is you got to be yourself. You have to be Chris. You got to be Trey. You can't be Garrett. Right? We can't be like, I've got to be like this other person because I think they're the coolest person in the world. That doesn't work because we're not being ourselves. We're denying who God made us to be, and when we do that, we just feel horrible. We put up this fake mask of who we think we need to be cool or to be accepted, and when we do that, we don't actually, even if you're now have tons of friends around you because you're, doing what you think is cool or what they're going to like, are you being yourself? No. So everything you do is fake. Is that exhausting? To be fake all the time? To not be yourself? To not be able to say, like, I really like this thing. There are some things I like to this day that kind of define me as an adult of like what I like. For many years, I felt I couldn't tell those things to other people because they were embarrassing and nerdy. I just wouldn't mention them. Now, fortunately, I live in a world where it's really okay and cool to like the things that I like because nerdy is cool. You all didn't live in that time when it was not cool to like things like Star Wars or science fiction or fantasy or to be a computer nerd and be like big on video games. There was a time where video games were not cool. I know, you all look at it and like, that's weird. But that's it. So you have to be yourself. Be authentic. Share who you really are because it is exhausting to try to be somebody else. And you lose who you really are and what you really care about and the people you really care about. Jesus is talking. Luke 10, verse 27. And he is Jesus, answered them, saying, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. If you don't love yourself, can you love other people? No. If you're not true to yourself and authentic of who you are and what you believe, can you really love other people? No. And the funny thing is, usually when you're yourself and you're authentic, you're way more fun to be with. I've known kids throughout the years who were afraid to be themselves so that they wouldn't be liked. Because too many people told them, you have to be this way, you have to like this thing, you have to follow this narrow line of what is cool and who you should be. And they were miserable because of it. And only when they got older and they realized they could be who they needed to be, who they felt comfortable be, and people accepted them as that, did they realize what they had missed in life and how important it was to be themselves. You got to be yourself. You got to love yourself. You have to be the person God created you to be. Otherwise, you're not going to be happy. In that video, she talked about we numb pain. How many of you like to be in pain? None of us. Whether it's emotional pain or physical pain or spiritual pain, whatever it is, we don't want to do it. The problem is when you numb one set of pain, you numb happiness at the same time. If you do things to avoid feel pain, now, I mean, you shouldn't inflict yourself with pain. That's not what I'm saying, right? We don't want to intentionally cause ourselves more pain. But there's going to be pain in life. There's going to be sadness. If you try to avoid all sadness in your life, you don't really understand what it means to be happy. It's kind of like that one thing, like you can't have light without darkness, right? Or you can't have darkness without light. There are these two things that are tied together. So is like life. Sometimes we have to have bad things happen. But we also have that, gives us that opportunity to experience the joy in life. But if we completely avoid, here's your emotions. If you don't want to ever have this emotion, so you keep all your emotions right here, right? I don't want to show emotion. I don't want to get too excited. I don't want to get too upset. I don't want people to see me get emotional about stuff. Then true, their middle range is here. You don't want to go lower than this because you don't want to go down here. That also means this is as high as you go. You can't experience this joy if you're not willing to experience that. Does that make sense? If you keep everything in the middle, you don't experience real joy, which is what God wants you to do. Because you're avoiding it. And we avoid it through drugs and bad relationships and avoiding things. We use other things to fill that time so we don't have to think about our pain. We can avoid it. And maybe it'll just go away. But it doesn't. And the thing that God gave us to make a long route to this point is the church. And He gives us the people within the church to be here for us, to be a place where we can go and be ourselves. The whole reason we have small groups and for you guys to share highs and lows isn't for me to have a special torture for you. It's to give you a place where you can be yourself and you can share what's going on in your life. Because it's important for you to have a place where you feel like I can be myself. I don't have any expectations, right? We have youth group on Sunday, or we have retreats, or we have those types. I let the kids be themselves. Why? Because you need a place where you don't have people saying, you have to be the athlete. You've got to be the star student. You've got to be the dancer who is always trying to achieve perfection. Right? We have enough people in our lives who are trying to have us be something that we have to try to constantly attain. Sometimes you just need to go someplace and be yourself. This is where that place should be. This is what we try for this church to be. The place where you can come and you can just be yourself and hang out and share who you really are with the world. Because there's plenty of other times we can't, or we don't. I encourage you to share yourself and who you are with everybody. Be true to who you are. Because that's how you're going to find happiness. And the really cool thing is, I don't want 50% of Brendan. Right? I want to know all the cool things that Brendan has to share. I don't want Lydia living her life at 60%. I want to know all the crazy, quirky, fun, outlandish parts of who Lydia is. Because that's where we get to know people and we really kind of understand who they are. And if I'm only getting 35% of Annalise, I'm missing 65% of who she is and all the fun things that she brings to the world. So be yourself. Share who you are. This is a place for you to do that safely, because there's going to be plenty of times where it's not. But the more you get used to sharing who you are, the gifts that you have, the things that you love, the things that you think about, the things that you're passionate about, the easier it gets to be to share that with other people in the world. Like she said, if everybody was who they really are and really shared what they cared about and was passionate about in the world, there would be a lot less lying and masks and hate in the world. Because we could all just be who we wanted to be and who God created us to be. Does that make sense? I know it's a long conversation, but I thought it was important because I've seen too many instances where you guys have been living in a life for the last 9, 10 months where you're basically compartmentalized all by yourselves, and we don't always have these times to share and be there. And I want to encourage you to do that. Now, some of you may not be comfortable sharing in group, especially in confirmation. I get it. Some of you are like, I'm not really going to share my highs and lows, what's really bothering me. I get that. You might not be at that point. My encouragement for you is to have somebody in your life you can share with, right? Whether that's your parent, or whether it's your best friend, or whether it's your grandma, or your uncle, or maybe your aunt, or your niece, or your cousin, or somebody in your life who you feel comfortable enough to say, hey, this is what's bothering me. And be really, really honest with them on what's going on. Hey, this is what I really, really love in life. Because sometimes you're like, I don't know if somebody is really going to accept me because I'm a huge fan of whatever. Find somebody you can share those things with and do so on a regular basis. It will make your life that much better. I do hope you find the church here a place you can do that. Because we all have times where we really struggle. I was thinking today of a time when I was struggling. And I ended up leaving work in the middle of the day and driving aimlessly, and I ended up here at the church, and I walked into the pastor's office and I just said, hey, this is what's going on in my life. I can look at that moment where I took that chance and went and shared in something that was really, really bothering me that I had been bottling up for months and months, and was able to share it with somebody because I felt secure. And it changed my life. I would not be standing here in front of you talking right now about God and the Apostles' Creed if it wasn't for that moment that happened over a decade ago. Probably almost 12 years ago. I would not be right here doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for that moment. Opening up to people, opening up to what God has already put into your heart will make your life fundamentally different, and I will say it will make it better. I just needed you to hear that message tonight, to understand why it is important to the things that we do here. The reason I ask you questions about what you think isn't because I need you to tell me the answer. I have the answer for myself. I know what I believe about my faith. I want you to think about what you is in your heart. I want you to be able to share it with other people so that they grow in it, but also that you grow in it and you understand where your life is and where your joy is and where your happiness is and where your passions are in life so that you can be the best people you are. That's the whole purpose of this confirmation class. Yes, we're going to teach you about Martin Luther. Yes, we're going to teach you about the Ten Commandments and the Apostles' Creed and the Lord's Prayer and all that fun stuff. I just want you to be the person God created you to be. The person that God enables you to be through His grace. That's all. That's the whole purpose of this. We just throw in all that other information so you make good decisions about it. Have a better understanding of it. And see why this thing called church, this thing called faith is important in our lives. So I need you to take out a pen and paper. Because I have some questions for you. And your leaders don't have these questions yet. So you will need to have them available so you can have a discussion in your small groups. So I need each of you to write these down. First question. What is one thing about you that you're afraid people might not like? What is one thing about you that you're afraid people might not like? What is one thing about you that people might not like? Ready for question number 2? What is one thing about you that you're afraid people might not like? Got it? Question number 2. What are the ways that you see in the world people numb their emotions? What are the ways that you've seen in the world, either it's your friends or your family, and you don't need to tell who you saw do this, but just what are the ways people numb their emotions? What are the ways people avoid the things that bother them in the world? What are the things you've seen in the world that people use to numb their emotions? Does that make sense? What are the people so they don't feel sad? What are the things that people do to avoid being sad? What are the things that people avoid their problems in their life? Because your things in your life at this age are probably different than the things that people do as adults. I can tell you that. But you're probably, some of the things that we experience, you will probably also see them doing that. Last question. What is the coolest thing about me? About you? What is the coolest? No, and I want you to be specific. What is the coolest thing about you? What is the thing that you feel is like the best thing you have to share with the world around you? Right? And I'm not saying like your stuff. I want the thing about you that makes you special. The thing that you feel like, this is my gift. This is what I care about. This is what I'm passionate about. And some of you might not have ever thought of that question. What is one of the things, like for me, what is the thing that I think is one of the greatest things that I have to share? The thing I wish people would know? I love to teach people. I love to share the things that I'm passionate about with other people. That's why I do what I do. Even the things like I love, my hobbies, I love sharing that with other people and saying, hey, this is how I do this thing with my hobbies. Because I like to teach. It's the thing that gives me joy. So I want you to think about it. What is the thing about you that you most wish you could share? Yes. Pardon me? What are the things that people use to avoid their emotions? That's another way of wording it. What are the things people do to avoid their emotions or avoid their problems? Got it? Okay. We're going to go to small groups. So thank you all very much. And we'll see you next week, and we'll continue with